flow freely, especially during times when trains are passing through the city. When the train comes through, Midtown becomes a bottleneck, one of the only areas where traffic can flow. In terms of location, Midtown truly is the heart of Kingston. But just as water can pass through a hose without knowing what's along the way, so too does the traffic passing through Midtown. Over here is different than over there. Publications don't run any featured articles about things over here. Nobody buys any property over here. When visitors come, they are told to fear everything over here.
Alright, so just please tell us your name, how long you've been in Kingston.
My name is Terrell Skinner. I've been in Kingston all my life.
Alright.
Thinking the city sidewalks is done. Mothers can't push the strollers. Schools, certain schools need to be open. And let's see, more education out here. Better.
More education. So you were saying like about the sidewalks, how mothers can't push their strollers though. So do you have any kids?
Yes, I have 3.
And is that something that you find a challenge, getting around town?
Yeah, because you gotta get in the middle of the street, and the cars hump your horn, and it's against the law. You get a ticket for it.
No doubt.
But it's putting the child in danger when there's cracks in the sidewalks.
And what areas do you find that the worst? Is it like Albany Avenue? Is it
Everywhere.
Broadway? It's everywhere. Everywhere. You gotta point it up at me so you can see me. So me and Ramir, what we're about to do is we're about to do a test to see how hard it is to push this stroller from this part of the block down to the other block. All right. Sidewalks need a little bit of work, but he's about to show us his muscle. He's basically going to act like he's helping his mother to push this down the street. And there's 70 pounds in the basket, so it could be groceries, it could be laundry, it could be anything. And now he's the one that's helping her. Let's see how it works out for him. All right, and go. All right, so he's making his way down. So far, he's doing pretty good. Okay, it looks like he might have a couple bumps coming up, but nothing too serious. Okay. All right, now he's got a little challenge up ahead. So Ramir's got the muscle going, making it a little bit easier for him. Let's see how he does.
There are 2 ways that you can revitalize almost anything, including cities. The first is to portray the city in such a positive light that people flock the city in hopes that what you portray becomes the city's reality. The second type of revitalization requires a sincere and honest account of what is actually happening, not what one would like to happen, but what is really happening.
And if you could pick one thing that you say could really make the city better, what would it be? What would you say to the city policymakers, including the mayor? What would you want him to know about what is really needed?
It's really needed.
Like
somewhere the kids can have somewhere to go at night, like the rec center downtown. I used to be back in the day.
No doubt.
Also, stop upgrading the force because you're taking money away from kids out here. Putting new engines in the vehicles and the police.
At your direction, the city made an investment in license plate reader computers.
Yes.
In your patrol car.
Yes.
Could you explain, a lot of people don't understand that program. Could you explain that and how it's working?
Yes. LPR, license plate readers. What it is or a car can reaches essentially you could be going 75, and it will pick up, read, and analyze the plate.
And shutting down the schools, shutting down the programs. It's not good. You got everybody getting VSS and this and that because they ain't getting that from the city.
And I got one more question for you, and that's about what kind of service that you could do. Like, say if we were to bring a bunch of new businesses to Broadway, what kind of businesses you think would be good to bring up here?
That's a good question.
Like somebody said they thought a Golden Corral, like a buffet. Another person said to put a cafe, like a Starbucks with coffee and Wi-Fi, and a whole bunch of things that ain't really up here right now. I don't know what stores you would choose. Somebody else said a Jimmy Jazz in here that, you know, urban clothing and where people could get jobs, and also something that relates to the people who are in this neighborhood. Any ideas?
Me, I'm all for the kids. So
All for the kids.
It should have a nice big building for all types of sports. Anything for the kids can stay out of trouble after 9 o'clock, especially on the weekends.
Now, when we get that building, you're gonna come back and coach, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. No doubt. So I heard that there was going to be an event today on the site of where the King's Inn used to be. King's Inn was used to be a motel, and then they turned it into like a Section 8 housing and emergency shelter, and then it eventually got so bad to the point where it got torn down. So today somebody in the city is having something to try to revitalize this area, and I'm just going to go over and see what happens.
Education is so key to me. It's the solution to many of the problems in Midtown.
In Midtown Kingston, there was an outcry in this one area called education. Everybody agreed that it was the one thing that could really make a difference.
You know, she's made a strong point about education. I can't tell you how important it is. In high school, I wasn't a good student. I wasn't a good student at all. I was such a poor student that my guidance counselor told me, well, maybe you can find a job and hold on to it. I was not encouraged.
The recommendation by the high school guidance counselor for Kevin Bryant to get a job and stick to it was wrong. Actually, Kevin Bryant's an attorney running for Ulster Family Court judge. In his high school years, he could have resembled any one of these young African American men. How do we know which one of them will be the next Kevin Bryant? We don't. And therefore, each and every black student who attends school not only has the right to, but should be encouraged.
I was not encouraged
to be the most that they could possibly be. The percentage of black students in Kingston High School who graduated within 4 years of starting high school was 45% in year 2010. That means that less than half the black students who attended Kingston High School in that year were likely to graduate. That also meant that students who attended schools in the two cities, Newburgh and Poughkeepsie, with the highest rates of violent crimes were more likely to graduate high school in a 4-year time frame than black students who attend high school in the city of Kingston. It is true that specific areas in the city of Kingston have elevated levels of rape, robbery, assaults, burglaries, thefts, auto thefts, arson, and even murder. But what I have found is that increased levels of crime in specific areas does not limit the ability level of the people who are living in those areas. So I conducted a study, and I did go into this study with some preconceived notions. But I wanted to see if there was anything concrete to support what I already believed to be true.
Half the people in the high school, their parents are wealthy. Our parents go through struggles. Our parents go through a lot of stuff, I think. So to be honest, I don't think the school understands.
I think some teachers can relate because some teachers been through the struggle like us too. So that's what I think. Not all teachers.
Yeah, same. I think some can too, but majority don't.
Do you feel like teachers can relate to you? Honestly, I feel like the teachers cannot relate to me because 99% of the teachers in my school are older Caucasians, and I'm obviously a younger African American, and my classes are not very diverse at all. Sometimes I'm usually 1 out of 5 or maybe even 6 African Americans in my class, so no, I don't feel like they relate to me at all.
They not out here seeing what we seeing or living how we living right now.
What about you?
They don't know. They just don't.
Most teachers don't really ask about you. They just, they look at you and see how you do in class or you in school, and they think that's how you act. But when you're outside of school, they think, oh, you're negative peer, you're not a positive peer, so I don't think a teacher can relate.
The study that I conducted was based on a small sample of cities with populations ranging between 20 and 30,000 people. Each city is also comparable in size and location. They include Ossining, Peekskill, Middletown, Newburgh, Poughkeepsie, and Kingston. The city of Middletown has a much greater population of minority students than the city of Kingston. The reported challenges of increasing graduation rates and academic performance among minorities include immigration and issues on the home front such as poverty, crime, and lack of family involvement. However, Middletown, with nearly double the amount of Black and Latino students, was able to graduate Black students at 87%. In comparison, Kingston, 69%. And again, Ossining has roughly double the amount of Blacks and Latinos living in the city, and yet Ossining has only half of the crime rates that we are experiencing in the city of Kingston.
Do you think your school understands how things are in this neighborhood?
Nah, they don't.
Why don't they?
Because they're not from here. Yeah, they don't know what's going on.
I honestly think they don't know how our neighborhoods are or how we live because they haven't been through what we've been through. They just don't know what's going on in our life. So
it's kind of hard for somebody to help you if they don't know where you come from or what you've been through.
I was amazed at how much high school students in the Black community had to say, and people in general, if you just give them a chance to speak. Just being able to meet some of the young Black people in my neighborhood who were trying to make it through the education system. But I knew that they needed to do more than make it through. And the school needed to do more than to just get them to cooperate with a set of academic expectations. It needed to recognize their interests, hone in on their specific skill sets, and cater to those areas to develop them to the highest possible potential.
Yeah, I mean, we go through a lot. My mom, you know what I mean, she 5 kids. My father passed away, and she basically made me who I am today.
Enjoy going to school every day, because people do not enjoy going to school. Coming from me, I sometimes don't enjoy going to school because I don't feel like I have anything in the school that interests me. Write poems, and I like to draw and stuff, and they don't really do that in our school. I have to go to a different school to do that stuff, and I wouldn't want to do that at a different school. I would just like to stay in one school to do that. So I think that if we would do more like writing or poems and things to think about, it would be better for our schools.
That's great. I agree. Nice work. All right, so is there anything else that you want to say to anybody who is watching this film? You guys did an awesome job, and thank you very, very much.
Be an individual, and God loves you in everything.
Amen.
The honor of working as a teacher in this area, and as a teacher I was really shocked, not just at some of the things I'm discussing here, but also in the viewpoint of some of the teachers who I've encountered, and I would hear them say things like, those students just don't care, and to put that kind of stigma on a student makes it nearly impossible for a teacher to really effectively communicate and to address the needs of that student.
So I heard that there was going to be an event today on the site of where the King's Inn used to be. King's Inn was it used to be a motel, and then they turned it into like a Section 8 housing and emergency shelter, and then it eventually got so bad to the point where it got torn down. So today somebody in the city is having something to try to revitalize this area, and I'm just going to go over and see what happens. How long you been serving this community?
About 25 years.
How long you been living in the city of Kingston?
Basically all my life.
Why do you do what you do, and how come you've been doing it for so long?
Well, why not do it?
That's why I'm glad.
The reason why I do it because
my man is
our Creator, God, Allah, He saved me from myself. I was a gangster. I lived that lifestyle, man. When I turned my life around, I saw that because He didn't allow them to give me a felony, my destiny was to do what I do.
If you was to say one thing that this city needs, I think we talked about this already. What would that one thing be?
Well, we need programs to help these kids. And not just programs, but we need people, man, that's willing to spend some time and invest in ourselves instead of complaining. I mean, we have to always remember that all of us started, we had a rocky path. All of our pastors, counselors, we got to remember that before we pass judgment on another.
So you basically
uproar. If it's a positive uproar or negative uproar, you're always going to have somebody behind you no matter what. But if you have the right people behind you, things could go even better. Know what I mean? Yeah. Now, if you have the right people by your side, things will go good. Now, if you sit there and you have a bunch of people that just don't know how to coordinate and don't know how to put things together, it happens like this.
Yeah.
You know, Uptown has a bunch of kids.
Yeah.
It's no reason why I'm sitting here looking at about 15 children right now. You feel me? So I know there is something wrong right now.
What's that song you wrote?
That song is called Never Will I Die for a Country That Don't Care For Me. I'm sick and tired of only tears that are staring at me. Only God knows the visions of my destiny. Not this world, only God.
Amid community hopefuls, belief in God is a common denominator. Some people look toward God for answers, solutions to world problems. And while Midtown is a melting pot of faith and culture, I reserve to go to a source that I personally trust. Minister Glenn Williams, otherwise known to me as Dad.
I remember you talked to me a lot about some of the movements that were going on in the 60s, but you also talked about what we need in addition to those movements. We have all these different agencies. Everybody has a cause that they're trying to do things with. You know, in addition to those movements, what else do you think that we need in order to see things change?
Well, I believe that we're going to need the life and the nature of Jesus Christ. And I know that a lot of people say, well, everybody's not going to do that. But when you come down and think about it, is that Jesus Christ was the servant, the highest servant there is, the highest ministry of servant. And so we are patterning after his nature. And so, all things was, were created by him. And so you would know that the way to serve would be from the king servant, who knows how to serve. So I think that this is what's missing, because there's always something that, you see most of the people that have come and gone, and a lot of them had good intentions, but something always gets in the way.
Yeah.
Something always gets in the way. They either, maybe gets caught up in politics or greed or something, or whatever it is, some part of humanity, no matter how good the intentions were, and no matter how good, whether they felt about the cause that they were after, there was always something that turned.
In confirmation, I found there to be a disconnect between the arts and humanities, politics, and the true needs of Midtown. And I also knew that to overemphasize the humanities would be to minimize the needs of people who had not yet connected to such a lifestyle where they could benefit from them. Plans to use arts to change Midtown are in progress, and yet there is little discussion of the majority population living in Midtown.
We'll be talking a little bit about our community and making a difference.
Good afternoon, everybody. I see a lot of people in this neighborhood that don't necessarily come here during the week and on other days. And that's a nice thing. But this city of Kingston needs more unity. My family goes back 7, 8 generations. We were slaves here on my mama's side. My great-great-grandmother was born in Hurley. Her name was Vanderzee. She held the name of the man who kept her captive. And her mother was named Jenny Cantine. And anybody know anything about Saugerties, you know that there's plenty of Cantines and they owe a lot of property and slaves in Saugerties.
We always thought, well, maybe we just get past this and it'll be over with. But we have all these things from the 60s and the 70s, and it's all compiled together in 2000.
Think about like the Black Panther movement, and think about the Civil Rights movement, the women's liberation and all that. Do you think that those movements are the same kind of things that we need today in order to see change?
Well, I think that they all have their own agenda. And because they all have their own agenda, it's coming against somebody else's, agenda. So you have all these conflicts. So it can never really be perfect because they're always in opposition with one another.
Do you think culture is enough to make a community stronger?
wrong with culture. Culture is my life, it's positive. And yeah, there's a lot of good things in culture. Yeah, there's some great things in culture. But it's a mixture. It's not just one thing.
Some cultures are impregnated with deep forms of sacrificial worship. There are now reports of drug trafficking and mass-scale murder springing up in connection with these kinds of services. It is evident that the Aztecs taught Mexicans about this kind of religious service. They blessed the ground in 4 cardinal points and asked permission from dead spirits to do their worship services. Some of the skulls on their black clothing and their nearby display are Mesoamerican skulls. It is the most prominent part of Aztec religious life, the role of human sacrifice. It was practiced in Mesoamerica, where human sacrifice was also to the sun and earth for food to grow. Even the women, so pleasantly dressed, offer a sacrifice through dance to the earth and sun for food provisions. This particular aspect of culture is indeed mixed, with shrines, food, drinks, and flowers for the dead. They offer candy in the shape of skulls, with the belief that the souls of dead children and adults coming back to the earth will reward them. It is confirmed that the worship of a skeletal saint has grown among Mexican drug gangs. There are turf battles, gang violence, and drug wars. Places where this form of worship have been accepted into the community have also become known as the murder capitals of the world. Today I saw the same skeletal image here in the city of Kingston. She is called Santa Muerte, or Holy Death. She is also called La Flaquita, or the skinny little girl. She is the Aztec god of death. Her spirit was born in the prison, a word that hovers over Midtown like a cloud of darkness. It is therefore not only ironic but deceptive that such a movement that literally advocates for death would come to Midtown and in the form of culture. It was as if the people were in a trance, strung along through a series of 5-minute performances, and all of a sudden hooked into an over 30-minute sacrificial seance. It must have made it easy to carry out such a hidden agenda as to do it right in the center of the city. And I began to realize that the very issues that this city needed to change, including violence, drugs, robberies, rapes, and even murder, were actually being ushered into the community.
Culture is a lot of different things. And some cultures, maybe even, having some more better things in one culture than another. But it can never really live up to the standard of bringing a world into transition.
No, actually, the so-called support system that the government has, to try to get help, you're required to basically give up everything you own.
Right. You mean in order to qualify for the benefits, SNAP benefits, or what?
Well, not so much SNAP, but more
health,
more like public assistance or whatnot. I wouldn't touch that system.
Yeah.
You can't even maintain your own banking account.
Yeah.
That to me is crazy.
So if
how are you going to teach people to be reliable on their own without allowing them to use a bank account?
Yeah.
Some people whose lives and or work conditions are less than perfect would rather remain that way than to accept government programs with many strings attached. For example, all people going into the Department of Social Services, clients and visitors, are screened by Ulster County Sheriff deputies for outstanding warrants. And what this means is that people who are in need of services have the added burden of being screened by police officers for no other reason than that they are in need of help.
And if you had to say one thing to make the city better, what would it be?
Get the jobs done on time and get them in, get them done right. I mean, the roads and the sewer systems in this town are terrible.
Yeah.
Get the jobs done on time. I mean, quit penny pinching, do the jobs right.
Yeah.
I mean, I know people who lived out in California after the earthquake back in '89, and they rebuilt a good part of the freeway system between Oakland and San Francisco in under 3 months. Here it takes 2 years just to get a sinkhole fixed. And they still haven't gotten it done. I mean, how are you going to tell people, well, you're SOL, buddy. What you going to do? Eminent domain on them?
Well, like I just said, I really appreciate your time. I'm going to take down your address and give you my card, and I definitely will follow up with you on this whole project. Thank you very much.
Okay.
All right. And it's basically about how we can improve the city of Kingston. So you have any thoughts on that subject?
Yes. I just think the police need to keep doing a good job that they have been doing. And
I think things have changed in the city. You've gotten away from families in one home, one residence, one number, 111 Main Street. Now we have multiple residents, houses that were converted. Right? I don't know the exact number, but I believe many of them are multi-family homes. Many of them rented, not owned. So the community as a whole has changed. Not good or bad, it's just changed. With that in mind, now that a house that had one family in it has got two. That means double the cars. Right? So parking is always going to be an issue. Substantial issues with parking throughout the city. Not just this ward, not just this area, all over. When we talk about neighborhood watch, I think part of it is people have to take ownership within their community.
keeping riffraff.
So basically keeping the crime down.
I was part of it for a long time.
Crime has a trajectory, and I believe it is contingent upon purpose or the lack thereof. It all starts when a person feels as though they have no identity, and therefore it is difficult for them to envision the direction that they would like to go in. Without identity, direction, or purpose, a person merely exists. In other words, they do just enough in life to get by. And in this situation, getting by itself becomes the purpose. Getting by or getting through life in the absence of purpose is a struggle. Every day, the person lives just to exist. Lack of fulfillment is as being alive without a cause. And when people who are created for a purpose do not discover it, they become depressed. Depressed people tend to make poor choices, not just because they want to, but because the perception of life is altered. In actuality, poor choices are often a person's attempt to cope with some aspect of their lives that they do not understand. Eventually, life itself becomes redefined as the ability to survive. Their view of the world is based on coping and survival. The values of life are simply to survive. As with being in the wild, there is a letting go of values and a decreased sensitivity to laws or resistance to them. A person may appear to be at home, dominant, or even happy with this lifestyle, but it is because the brain has undergone a series of conflict, confusion, and eventually drugs. Drugs can often be the nail in the coffin, the point at which a person can become legally liable, or even worse, subjected to a self-destructing pattern that leads to death. I also believe this same trajectory to be true for a neighborhood or a city. No matter which one, they all need identity.
Not gonna lie to you, I still do drink. All that good stuff. Bad stuff, whatever. I don't do drugs no more. Drugs is what took me over. You cannot beat it. It's a losing battle. I sit out here like Jabo, this man next to me.
Yeah.
I've known him for 25 years.
Willie.
Yep.
All right.
Very good guy, man. Wouldn't hurt a fly. We're just out here actually trying to survive.
Crime is the most concentrated in an area of Midtown I call the Triangle. The Triangle starts at Broadway and Cedar Street and back to Clinton Avenue. In terms of crime, the most intense warfare stops at St. James, and then the tip meets with Broadway again. The Triangle is also confirmed by crime concentration maps of the city. Darker shaded areas indicate higher rates of crime, and while some cities do not even have a shaded area at all, Kingston's Triangle is shaded dark, indicating that it is an area of intense criminal activity. I have a theory called pathogen theory, and it is based on the conclusion that crime can only exist when certain preconditions are present. The preconditions are alcohol and drugs, poorly run delis and bodegas, slumlords, lack of community activism, and lack of proper exercise and nutrition. These preconditions are like batteries or energy sources to crime. In other words, they fuel a bad thing for communities. Unfortunately, these energy sources of crime become stronger when they are left untouched, the same way pathogens do in food under certain conditions.
Well, I know a lot of people got different issues and stuff and problems. So the way they talk about it is the way they feel. So you gotta understand the way they feel it in order to talk about it. Amen. So.
Headphones and turn up the stereos, we're proud of it. Bump it loud as you can. We ain't ashamed of the place we came from, our talents. Been overlooked for too long, but we too strong. My brother Haman ran through a whole city, was mad fast and crazy strong. We used to race in the street, you had kicks or not. You could race in your bare feet, disgrace the one you beat. Replace the highest lead, claim your title and now your rivals respect when you speak. Remember the days I used to hang out in hallways at 13 years of age. I seen some things I should have never seen, but we still had our dreams, and that's why I'm restoring the feeling. Can't take us out. Put it in headphones and bump it in your stereo. We ain't here just to be scaring you. We got talents and gifts too, skills that you never knew. It all started in this community too. Put it in headphones and bump it in your stereo. We ain't here just to be scaring you. We got talents and gifts too, skills that you never knew. It all started in this community too.
You ain't got to get in their head, but just get them to understand that, okay, what's going on in the neighborhood, somebody can do something about it to help the conditioning and stuff.